What if your entire life is just one chapter in an eternal story that began long before you were born and will continue long after you're gone? Jung and Eliade revealed that we're all unconsciously repeating mythical patterns that connect us to the deepest layers of human experience. Before I reveal these profound insights that could completely transform how you understand your life patterns, please subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This information might change everything you thought you knew about why certain experiences keep repeating in your life. Now, let me ask you something that might shake you to your core. Have you ever noticed that despite all your efforts to change, to grow, to make different choices, certain patterns keep showing up in your life? The same types of relationships, the same kinds of challenges, the same emotional cycles that seem to repeat endlessly, just with different faces and circumstances. Most people think this is coincidence, bad luck, or personal failure. But Carl Jung and Mircea Eliade discovered something far more profound. They realized that what we experience as personal repetition is actually our participation in what they called the eternal return of archetypal stories that have been playing out in human consciousness for thousands of years. Jung, the pioneering psychologist who mapped the depths of the human psyche, and Eliade, the brilliant historian of religions who decoded the sacred patterns underlying all human cultures, together revealed one of the most important truths about human existence. We are not just living our individual lives, we are unconsciously reenacting eternal stories, mythical patterns, archetypal dramas that connect us to the collective soul of humanity. Think about this for a moment. Every culture throughout history has told essentially the same stories: the hero's journey, the fall from grace, the death and rebirth, the search for the beloved, the confrontation with the shadow, the return to the source. These aren't just entertaining tales. According to Jung and Eliade, these are the fundamental patterns through which consciousness itself evolves and expresses. But here's what's revolutionary about their insight. These archetypal stories aren't just ancient history or cultural artifacts. They are living patterns that continue to play out through your personal life, your relationships, your career, your spiritual journey, even your dreams and fantasies. Jung discovered that buried deep in what he called the collective unconscious are universal patterns of experience he termed archetypes. These archetypes are like psychological templates that shape how we experience and interpret reality. The mother, the father, the hero, the lover, the wise old man, the trickster, the shadow. These aren't just concepts or symbols. They are living energies that influence our thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and life choices in ways we rarely recognize. Meanwhile, Eliade was studying something parallel in the realm of religion and mythology. He discovered that ancient cultures understood time not as linear progression, but as eternal return. They believed that through ritual, ceremony, and sacred action, they could participate in the original mythical events that created the world. Every spring planting wasn't just agriculture. It was a reenactment of the cosmic creation. Every marriage wasn't just a personal union. It was a repetition of the sacred marriage that brought the universe into being. What Jung and Eliade realized together was that this eternal return isn't just something that happened in ancient cultures. It's happening right now in your life, through your personality patterns, your relationship dynamics, your life crises, and your moments of transformation. Let me give you a concrete example. Have you ever noticed that you keep attracting the same type of romantic partner? Different names, different faces, different backgrounds, but somehow the same essential dynamic plays out over and over again? Most people think this is just bad luck or poor judgment. But Jung and Eliade would say you're unconsciously reenacting an archetypal story. Maybe you're playing out the eternal story of Beauty and the Beast, always drawn to partners who need to be healed or transformed. Maybe you're repeating the myth of Persephone, constantly being drawn into underworld relationships that promise depth but deliver darkness. Maybe you're living the pattern of the eternal search for the perfect beloved, never quite finding the one who matches your inner ideal. The key insight is that these aren't personal failures or psychological problems to be fixed. They are archetypal patterns, seeking expression and evolution through your individual life. You're not just choosing partners, you're participating in eternal stories about love, transformation, sacrifice, and growth that have been playing out in human consciousness since the beginning of time. Or consider your career patterns. Do you find yourself repeatedly facing the same types of challenges at work, always dealing with difficult authority figures, or constantly feeling undervalued, or perpetually struggling with creative blocks? Jung and Eliade would say you're not just having workplace problems, you're reenacting archetypal dramas. Maybe you're living the eternal story of David and Goliath, always finding yourself in situations where you must face seemingly impossible odds. Maybe you're repeating the myth of Prometheus, constantly bringing new ideas or innovations to organizations that resist change. Maybe you're playing out the pattern of the wounded healer, drawn to work that involves helping others while struggling with your own unresolved issues. The profound realization that Jung and Eliade offer is that when you understand which archetypal stories you're reenacting, you gain the power to participate in them consciously rather than being unconsciously driven by them. You move from being a victim of repetitive patterns to becoming a conscious participant in eternal dramas. But this goes even deeper. Eliade discovered that in ancient cultures, the eternal return wasn't seen as boring repetition, it was seen as sacred renewal. Each time the mythical patterns were reenacted, they brought fresh energy, new possibilities, deeper understanding. The same story told again, but with greater wisdom, more consciousness, deeper integration. This is the key to understanding why your life patterns repeat. It's not because you're stuck or broken or unable to learn, it's because your soul is trying to master certain archetypal lessons, to evolve certain aspects of consciousness, to integrate certain universal truths. Each repetition is an opportunity for deeper understanding, greater mastery, more conscious participation in the eternal stories that shape human experience. Jung called this process individuation. It's the lifelong journey of becoming conscious of the archetypal patterns that influence your life and learning to work with them creatively, rather than being unconsciously controlled by them. When you recognize that your personal struggles are actually participation in universal dramas, everything changes. Your relationship patterns aren't personal failures. They're opportunities to master archetypal lessons about love, intimacy, boundaries, and growth. Your career challenges aren't just professional obstacles. They're invitations to embody archetypal energies of leadership, creativity, service, or transformation. Your emotional cycles aren't psychological problems. They're participation in eternal rhythms of death and rebirth, descent and ascent, loss and renewal. Eliade showed that ancient peoples understood something we've forgotten. Life isn't meant to be a straight line of constant progress and improvement. Life is meant to be a spiral of eternal return, where we revisit the same essential themes and challenges at deeper and deeper levels, gaining wisdom and integration with each cycle. Think about the seasons. Spring doesn't happen once and then we're done with growth forever. Spring returns every year, but each spring is unique, bringing new possibilities while following the eternal pattern. Your life follows the same principle. You don't resolve your core archetypal themes once and move on. You spiral through them repeatedly, each time with greater consciousness, deeper wisdom, more skillful participation. This is why Jung emphasized the importance of understanding your personal mythology. What are the recurring themes in your life? What stories do you find yourself living over and over again? What archetypal energies are seeking expression and evolution through your individual experience? When you begin to see your life this way, everything shifts. Your repetitive patterns become sacred opportunities rather than personal failures. Your challenges become archetypal initiations rather than random suffering. Your relationships become cosmic dramas rather than just personal interactions. But Jung and Eliade also discovered something else crucial. The eternal return isn't just individual, it's collective. The archetypal stories playing out in your personal life are also playing out in your culture, your society, your historical moment. You're not just living your individual story, you're participating in the collective evolution of consciousness itself. The patterns you're working with in your personal relationships reflect the archetypal challenges your entire culture is facing around love, intimacy, and connection. The career struggles you're navigating mirror the collective transformation happening in how humanity relates to work, creativity, and purpose. Your spiritual journey is part of the larger awakening that's happening in human consciousness. This is the profound vision that Jung and Eliade offer. Your individual life is simultaneously deeply personal and utterly universal. You are living your unique story while participating in eternal patterns that connect you to all of humanity across all of time. Now that you understand the fundamental principle of eternal return in your personality, let's explore how to work with this knowledge practically. Because recognizing that you're reenacting archetypal stories is just the beginning. The real transformation happens when you learn to participate in these eternal patterns consciously and creatively. Jung and Eliade both emphasized that consciousness is the key to transformation. When you're unconsciously driven by archetypal patterns, you experience them as compulsive repetition, as being stuck in cycles you can't break. But when you become conscious of the archetypal stories you're living, you gain the power to work with them as creative forces for growth and evolution. The first step in this process is what Jung called archetypal recognition. This means learning to identify which archetypal patterns are most active in your life. Look at your recurring relationship dynamics, your career patterns, your emotional cycles, your dreams and fantasies. What themes keep appearing? What stories do you find yourself living over and over again? For example, do you consistently find yourself in the role of the rescuer, always drawn to people who need saving or healing? This might indicate that you're working with the wounded healer archetype, the eternal story of someone who transforms their own suffering into the ability to help others heal. Understanding this pattern allows you to work with it more consciously, recognizing both its gifts and its shadow aspects. Or maybe you notice that you repeatedly face situations where you must choose between security and adventure, between staying safe and taking risks. This could indicate that you're working with the explorer or pioneer archetype, the eternal story of leaving the known world to discover new territories. Recognizing this pattern helps you understand that these choices aren't random life circumstances, but opportunities to master archetypal lessons about courage, trust, and growth. Eliade's contribution to this process is equally important. He showed that archetypal patterns aren't just psychological phenomena, they're sacred stories that connect us to the deepest sources of meaning and purpose. When you recognize the archetypal story you're living, you're not just gaining psychological insight, you're connecting with the sacred dimension of your experience. This is why Eliade emphasized the importance of ritual and ceremony in working with archetypal patterns. Ancient cultures understood that to transform an archetypal pattern, you need to engage with it not just mentally, but through embodied sacred action. You need to create rituals that honor the archetypal energy while consciously directing it toward growth and evolution. Let's say you recognize that you're working with the death and rebirth archetype, constantly going through cycles of endings and new beginnings in your career, relationships, or creative projects. Instead of just enduring these cycles unconsciously, you could create personal rituals that honor each phase of the process. A ceremony to consciously release what's ending, a period of sacred waiting in the unknown, a celebration to welcome what's being born. Jung called this process active imagination. Instead of being passively driven by archetypal energies, you learn to engage with them creatively and consciously. You might dialogue with the archetypal figures that appear in your dreams. You might create art, write stories, or engage in movement practices that give expression to the archetypal energies moving through your life. But here's where Jung and Eliade's insights become even more profound. They discovered that when you work with archetypal patterns consciously, you don't just transform your individual life. You participate in the collective evolution of those archetypal energies themselves. You help the eternal stories evolve and grow through your conscious participation. Think about this. Every time someone works consciously with the lover archetype, learning to love more skillfully, more authentically, more wisely, they contribute to the evolution of love itself in human consciousness. Every time someone embodies the leader archetype more consciously, serving others while maintaining integrity and wisdom, they help evolve what leadership means for humanity. This is the sacred responsibility that comes with archetypal awareness. You're not just working on your personal issues. You're participating in the ongoing creation and evolution of the archetypal patterns that shape human experience. Your individual growth contributes to the collective wisdom of our species. Eliade showed that ancient cultures understood this responsibility deeply. They saw their ritual participation in mythical patterns not as personal therapy, but as cosmic service. By reenacting the sacred stories consciously and skillfully, they helped maintain the harmony and balance of the entire universe. We can reclaim this understanding in our modern context. When you work with your archetypal patterns consciously, when you transform your repetitive cycles into conscious evolution, you're not just helping yourself, you're contributing to the healing and evolution of the collective human psyche. But Jung and Eliade also discovered something else crucial about working with archetypal patterns. They found that the goal isn't to escape or transcend these eternal stories. The goal is to embody them more fully, more consciously, more creatively. The eternal return isn't a prison to escape from. It's a sacred spiral to dance with. This is a radical shift from how most people approach their life patterns. Instead of trying to break free from repetitive cycles, you learn to spiral through them with greater awareness, skill, and creativity. Instead of seeing recurring themes as problems to solve, you recognize them as archetypal gifts to master. For instance, if you keep attracting relationships that challenge you to develop better boundaries, instead of trying to avoid these situations entirely, you learn to engage with the boundary-setting archetype more skillfully. You recognize that this is an eternal theme in human relationships, and your job is to become increasingly masterful at navigating it. Or if you repeatedly face career situations that require you to stand up for your values against institutional pressure, instead of trying to find a job where this never happens, you learn to embody the truth-teller or whistleblower archetype more effectively. You develop the skills, wisdom, and resilience needed to fulfill this archetypal role with greater success and less personal cost. Jung emphasized that this process requires what he called the transcendent function. This is the ability to hold the tension between opposing forces within an archetypal pattern without collapsing into one side or the other. Most archetypal stories involve fundamental tensions or paradoxes that can't be resolved through simple either-or thinking. The lover archetype involves the tension between intimacy and autonomy, between merging and maintaining individuality. The leader archetype involves the tension between power and service, between directing others and empowering them. The creator archetype involves the tension between inspiration and discipline, between spontaneous creativity and structured effort. Learning to work with archetypal patterns means developing the capacity to dance with these tensions creatively rather than trying to resolve them permanently. You learn to move fluidly between different aspects of an archetypal energy as circumstances require, rather than getting stuck in rigid patterns. Eliade's research showed that ancient wisdom traditions understood this principle deeply. Their sacred stories weren't simple moral tales with clear heroes and villains. They were complex narratives that explored the full spectrum of archetypal energies, including their light and shadow aspects, their creative and destructive potentials. This is why working with archetypal patterns requires both courage and humility. You must be willing to face the shadow aspects of the archetypal energies you're working with. If you're embodying the leader archetype, you must acknowledge your potential for abuse of power. If you're working with the lover archetype, you must face your capacity for possessiveness or codependency. But Jung and Eliade discovered that when you work with archetypal shadows consciously, they become sources of wisdom and power rather than unconscious sabotage. The shadow aspects of archetypal patterns aren't obstacles to overcome. They're essential energies to integrate and transform. This integration process is what Jung called the union of opposites. It's the ability to hold both the light and shadow aspects of an archetypal pattern in conscious awareness, using the tension between them as a source of creative energy and wisdom. For example, the wounded healer archetype includes both the gift of being able to help others heal and the shadow of becoming addicted to being needed or avoiding your own healing. When you integrate both aspects consciously, you become a more effective healer who can serve others without losing yourself in the process. The practical application of these insights is profound. Instead of trying to fix your life patterns or escape your recurring themes, you learn to work with them as sacred assignments, as archetypal lessons you're here to master for both your individual evolution and the collective good. You begin to ask different questions about your life experiences. Instead of, "Why does this keep happening to me?" you ask, "What archetypal story am I participating in, and how can I embody it more consciously?" Instead of, "How can I avoid this pattern?" you ask, "How can I dance with this pattern more skillfully?" This shift in perspective transforms everything. Your challenges become initiations. Your relationships become archetypal collaborations. Your career becomes a vehicle for embodying archetypal energies in service to the world. Your entire life becomes a conscious participation in the eternal stories that shape human consciousness. Jung and Eliade's vision offers us a way to understand our lives that is simultaneously deeply personal and utterly universal. You are living your unique individual story while participating in eternal patterns that connect you to all of humanity across all of time. Your personal growth contributes to the evolution of consciousness itself. The eternal return in your personality isn't a curse to escape or a problem to solve. It's a sacred spiral to dance with, an archetypal gift to master, a cosmic story to embody with ever greater consciousness, creativity, and skill. When you embrace this understanding, when you learn to work with your archetypal patterns as sacred assignments rather than personal problems, you step into your role as a conscious participant in the ongoing creation of human consciousness itself. You become not just someone living a life, but someone helping to evolve the eternal stories that shape all life. If this resonated with you, share in the comments which archetypal patterns you recognize in your own life and how this perspective might change how you work with them. Subscribe for more insights into the depths of human consciousness and the sacred patterns that shape our existence. Remember, your individual journey is simultaneously a personal adventure and a contribution to the collective evolution of human wisdom.